Besides increasing the distribution rate from the State Land Trust, Proposition 123 also gives more money to schools from the general fund. If passed, overall spending will increase by about $280 per student annually. Here now to debate Prop 123 is Andrew Morrill, president of the Arizona Education Association and a supporter of the measure, and Morgan Abraham, who is leading the campaign against Prop 123. Good to have you both here. Thanks for joining us. Why is Prop 123 good for Arizona?
Because we finally changed the course that's been in the wrong direction for years. Frankly, we have sent an unwelcoming message to educators, not just our teachers, but the folks that keep campuses and students safe and orderly, that they're not valued, that their work is no priority in Arizona. Voters should be credited with raising the education funding issue to the #1 priority in this conservative border state. It's very clear that voters created this victory, created this moment. We've got to do something to stem the absolute exodus of teachers and people leaving schools. We've got to do something for the students in our classrooms right now, over 1 million of them. We can have this win, and we can leverage this win into other wins very soon.
Why is Prop 123 bad for Arizona?
That was great, but it didn't really talk into any of the actual details of Prop 123. When you look at Prop 123, we call it the 3 Ts: triggers, trust, tax cuts. It adds triggers to our Constitution that limit funding for education forever, not just in the 10-year term of 123, but forever. It depletes the land trust, so future students and teachers, and this includes teachers, get less money for education forever as well, by $100 million a year. And then this is clearly a ploy to cut more taxes. They're artificially funding education out of the land trust so they don't have to touch the budget surplus of the Capitol so they can cut taxes with that money.
Pick a T and go. He's got 3 things.
But they're all the same T, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Listen, the no vote, no matter where it comes from, hurts teachers just as bad, and it joins the ranks of no votes for the last 15 years that have kept salaries the lowest across the country, kept per pupil funding the lowest in the country. There's no difference between a no vote that does harm from somebody who claims to have good intentions and then puts his foot down on the backs of teachers and says, guess what? My no is okay, even though it's going to have the same effect as every other no you've felt.
Respond, please.
So we have, teachers all over the state that are against 123, and obviously they're not against 123 because it's not bad for education. They're against 123 because this is literally the ball game for education in the state. Public education in the state. If 123 goes through, we will get less money forever. We also have a teachers union that's on board with us. This is not, by voting no for on 123 is a vote for education. If you are okay with spending future teachers and children's money now, instead of using the budget surplus, you should vote yes. But if you want to push the legislature to spend the money that they have on education without putting the future at risk, vote no.
People will argue that failure, if this goes down, goes back to the courts. Uncertain outcome. Teachers don't get raises. Districts are already budgeting for the raises. A whole deck of cards goes flying across the room if this doesn't get passed.
Sure. So this goes down May 18th. Our state treasurer, Jeff DeWitt, has promised to petition the judge to settle this lawsuit based on what we call the DeWitt plan. We have so much money in our budget surplus, even more money than the JLBC and the legislature knew about because tax day just happened. It is ridiculous that we're proposing to spend future generations' money instead of just spending the money we already have sitting in the account. So this is an easy thing to settle. This is not hard. When we made Prop 123, we were at a time when we didn't have this budget surplus. We have the budget surplus now. Let's settle the lawsuit and get back to paying.
Ted, that's not correct. We had a budget surplus. We didn't have the votes, and Jeff DeWitt doesn't either. He only lacks 2 things, really, to make his DeWitt fantasy come true. One is viability in the current legislature, and the other is really the legal mechanism to make it happen. He's named as a defendant, but this is really just a ploy. What we have to focus on is the impact that a no vote has. It defies all logic to suppose that you can prove your commitment to education funding in front of an already conservative legislature by saying we're so committed to education funding that we turn down $3.5 billion. We will start worse than ground zero. We will start in a trough and then expect a legislature to come around magically, because we all want that to happen.
It sounds like you're admitting how bad 123 is for the future, but you're just basically saying that there's no other way forward.
Actually, the opposition is based on 2 complete mistakes. One is that by voting no on 123, we prove a commitment to education funding. And the other is this magic that supposedly is going to happen if we either go back to court, those of us who were actually involved in that, and you were not, with all due respect, know that there's a dead end there. or that we're going to magically produce results in our November election that we haven't produced in the last 14 years. That's actually a deception visited on our teachers and our students that we can't afford.
But you're saying that this is a bad thing. You're just afraid of what happens if we vote no and then
Actually, I haven't said that at all. It is the necessary, critical first
step. You're using words like necessary, we need it. Is Prop 123 a good thing for the future?
It absolutely is. What I need you to do, Morgan, is take a look at these salary increases right here. I want you to circle for me the districts that you don't think deserve a salary increase right now.
Yeah, so
these are agreed. Now wait a second.
I'll stop. My mom's actually a teacher, so
agreed
my
upon
family
salary
feels
increases.
this more than most families.
These
my
are
mom
agreed
is
upon salary
you know,
increases if 1, 2, 3 passes.
let
Which
him
ones do you
respond.
think
my
we should
mom
not
is
have?
a teacher, so my
And
family.
I was a teacher for
my family
17
feels this
years.
more than ever. All we are saying is we live in a state where the constant budget, constant tax cuts have just keep going and going and going. And by passing Prop 123, we are allowing that to continue.
Prop 123 pays teachers right now what they need most.
You are spending the
and
money
that's
of
revenue.
the future students and the future teachers, and it doesn't belong to them right now.
But
There's
your
an
crystal
easy-
ball on what
there's-
happens in 10 years is obscured by the fact that your crystal ball's been wrong so far. You sang a doomsday prophecy about this session that's been incorrect.
So you like
How do you
123?
expect us to believe what's going to happen in 10 years? You don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, and there's the contradiction. This is essentially the difference. The Prop 123 campaign, the PRO campaign, puts people before policy. Morgan doesn't know the folks in our schools, and he's not burdened with the responsibility to do what's right by them now.
Respond, please.
Yeah, I mean, you will not say anything about whether 123 is good or bad. You're using words like necessary.
I've answered that absolutely.
We have to.
It
I
is
want
good
to
right
look
now
at some
in the
numbers
short
real quick
term.
that I brought that we
Please.
can kind of.
And it
So
creates
this
the
is
momentum for
our
for
operating
other
money
victories.
right now. This is straight from the Treasurer's Office. We have more cash on hand at this point in the year than we've ever had in
Morgan,
the history
you
of
have
this
no
state. And on
political
top of that,
viability
this goes back to the original point. Is
None.
I think what he's saying.
Sure, and I get that.
You're
what
selling
he's saying
a
is,
fantasy to people.
Andrew, hold on a second. What he's saying is the money's there.
Passionate.
The surplus is there. I mean, we could wind up having phenomenal revenue.
We have
But if the
phenomenal
legislature doesn't give it to education, it's not there.
Right, and we're saying there's a path forward. We have the treasurer already on board. Obviously, we have a majority of the legislators there. They're waiting. You're not seeing legislators talk about Prop 123. They're sitting back and waiting because they know how bad it is, but they're not going to campaign for it. And the second this goes down, you have the education community, you have the treasurer, you have the majority of the legislators. There is a budget that can be passed, and we can still cut taxes and do what the governor promised. This is our last slide. This shows the budget surplus after we spend money on Prop 123. There's so much money in there. We can spend the money on Prop 123 from our budget surplus and cut taxes.
It reads like a great story, and it will completely skip over and once again deliver a no to the teachers and the students in our schools right now. There's not one funding argument that goes away right now if we pass 123.
Does it bother you that we're basically, the argument goes, you're selling assets to let lawmakers off the hook for what they should have done and the courts said they should have done in the first place?
We're balancing the needs of 1 million students right now in our schools with the needs of students in the future. Morgan has no ability to say what kind of funding mechanisms will be available in the future at all. He's got a kind of a shady crystal ball.
But can you? What does your crystal ball say when there are triggers in this proposition that suggest that if education funding hits a certain amount of general revenue, all of a sudden cuts come back?
And
hang on one second.
Hold on, let him respond, please.
The triggers were part of the negotiation, and the overall state cap is a mathematical reality only and a political fantasy. Budgets don't grow that way. There's been a lot made of that. An article in the paper today in the Capital Times came out and said it's unlikely we would ever hit that 49%. The only time we have was when we completely redid the funding formula. That's another part of the fantasy.
Bottom line, this helps schools and teachers now.
And we can still help schools and teachers now without stealing from the future. And I
absolutely
want to talk
cannot.
about this 49% trigger real quick. We are $1 billion away from where we were in 2007 when you factor in inflation. If we were to infuse some magic tax, $1 billion into our budget right now, we would trigger that 49%. So what he's saying, by him telling you that we can never hit that 49%, he's telling you we will never reach 2007 levels of funding again.
So if we put $500 million into our schools in a future year, Morgan would turn that down. If Morgan had designed the pyramids, he would have built them from the top down. He's actually convinced himself that what could happen 10 years from now is more important than what's happening to our teachers and our students in our schools right now.
We have a plan. I mean, it's very
Your plan
obvious.
is based on fantasy.
The average voter is going to look at this and say, you know what, I have kids and grandkids and I care about them just as much as I care about the students right now. Why aren't we using the budget surplus?
Bottom line, Ted, no is not a strategy, no is not a promise, and it does not create the future wins this state needs.
That's it. Got to stop it right there. Gentlemen, good stuff. Good to have you both
Thanks.
here. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Nice job.